I ngā mana, I ngā reo, I ngā karangatanga maha, tēnā koutou. I would like to first mihi to Te Atiawa, mana whenua of the land where the ceremony is taking place, and secondly thank the Holocaust Centre for inviting our whānau to take part in today's proceedings. This is an honour and a privilege, particularly significant to our family as the Holocaust Centre has given us so much tautoko and guided us throughout our research. It was the Centre's education program that first screened The Power of Good, a film about resistance work, of Nicholas Winton in particular, when I was just 8 or 9 years old. Without this event, I would have never encouraged my nana to reignite her search for Ali and subsequently uncover my great-grandparents' resistance efforts. In the spirit of education as continued resistance, my grandfather, Marcel, Johanna Fritz's youngest son, has decided to return the Righteous Among the Nations medal to the Wellington Holocaust Centre in a ceremony later in this year. Our family has agreed it should be shared with the young people of Aotearoa who come to learn the sentiments of never forget, never again. Johanna Fritz's story is often glorified and commonly branded as heroism, but we know that for my great-grandparents following the war, their memories of resistance were remembered with neither admiration nor gloat. In fact, due to failed resistance efforts, Fritz almost never spoke of this time. It is only through the strong bond formed between Yo and my nana, Gloria, her daughter-in-law, that she passed on mere snippets of their experience. I imagine it was a similar mother-daughter bond with Ali that encouraged her to share this story with Gloria. Like many records of resistance, behind the films and novels is a sober and humbling narrative. Until we eventually found Ali, there was no triumph in the information that we had. After all, Johanna Frits never knew if Ali had survived. I often wonder if Johanna Frits would have been comfortable sharing this story, or even accepted much of their postpartum recognition, had they been alive today. What I'm trying to say is that, while I did not have the fortune to know my great-grandparents, at every step along this journey, their actions have been described to me as the default response. Looking back, knowing the horrors that occurred across the continent, it's easy to see these actions as stoic. But within the walls of the Hakkens household, this was the obvious course of action. I'm sure the risks were heavily discussed, but after the fact, there was little to talk about. We will never know what evoked the resistance that followed. It may have been Yo's prior connection to the Szanowskis as their housekeeper. Maybe it was their youthful confidence. I don't want to reduce the complexities of the decisions involved during the Holocaust. However, learning about my great-grandparents has showed me that for Yo and Fritz, any compliance with hate was the unaccustomed action. I am not trying to downplay the importance of resistance, but rather represent the community effort that it took. Had there not been a mix of organised and spontaneous resistance from these like-minded people, many of the resistance efforts would have failed and never been attempted. Through this network, Fritz began sabotaging German airplanes, forging false documentation, and providing bicycles for Jewish people to flee the country. Yo sewed gems and valuables into the lining of Jewish children's jackets, and was probably largely responsible for caring for Ali in the first 2 years of the occupation. It's important in this story to also mention Ali's uncles, who themselves facilitated the temporary fostering of Ali to the Hakkens family. They gave Johanna Frits an opportunity to fight indifference, and themselves also saved lives of numerous other Jewish people around Holland. It's also important to recognise the Neal family, who sheltered Ali for the latter half of her infancy, when illness riddled the Hakkens family home. Their resistance was in spite of indifference, but I imagine it also gave Johanna Frits hope that their family would survive without having to compromise Ali's safety. Finally, it's crucial to mention Ali's mother Gita, who perhaps in this story sacrificed the most. Her parting with Ali, although necessary, must have felt far more bitter than sweet. This separation is something I think about regularly, and each time it would always emphasize the risk and emotional toll that leaving Ali must have had on Gita. The determination to see her family alive and prosperous is one that cannot be wholly described in a few sentences, but can be paraphrased by the word resistance. All throughout her life following the war, this continued. She immigrated many times and shifted her family for better opportunities, often as a single parent. She sheltered another Polish Jew who also had no family left, and so we see the spirit of resistance and self-sacrifice both during the war, when she fled from the Netherlands, and following the war within Gita herself. We wholeheartedly accept and are humbled by the recognition of Johanna Frits as resistance members, but we know that it was beyond just personal sacrifice. It was the common ideology amongst many people, young and old, that facilitated and organised resistance. Before I end, I want to mihi to Elli Mantegari, previously Elli Szanowski, for allowing us to share her story and being so encouraging over the years. She is truly a loved member of the Hakkens family, and through sharing her story has continued the spirit of resistance. I will leave you with some words from her. The opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. The opposite of beauty is not ugliness, it is indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it is indifference. The opposite of life is not death, it is indifference. Tēnā koutou.